Okay, for this one we're going to talk about how to help you choose a sport for your kid. Now, not everybody's going to agree with this, but these are just suggestions. I think tennis, probably the best sport for a kid to play. What's great about tennis is you can play it while you're young, you can continue to play it your whole life, you can play with men, you can play with women. It's also a rich people sport, so you're going to meet rich people. Your kid's going to be around rich people in the sense that they're going to learn good manners. You got to behave yourself at the tennis club. You got to dress in a uniform and have good manners. So helps a kid to grow up to get a sense of how to behave around people. Maybe someday they'll give them a job or something. Okay, next thing, cross country and track, like track and field. What I like about cross country is, I briefly ran cross country myself. The type of discipline, the mentality to push yourself to keep going for that full 3 miles or whatever race you run, that's very similar to the discipline to make yourself become a good student or to deal with any type of adversity that requires good self-control and discipline. So anyways, in my experience, cross-country runners are by far the best students academically that I encountered in high school. And I've also known other cross-country runners who told me that they've never seen anybody who was a runner become demented in terms of Alzheimer's. So they tend to be pretty healthy, and you can keep on being a runner all your life. By track, I mean things like maybe running sprints, other distance races. Okay, piano. Piano is obviously a musical instrument rather than a sport, but you don't have to play a sport. Piano is the best musical instrument to play. And when you learn music like piano, you not only just learn music, you learn the whole history of classical music, and you get an education with it. And a lot of the smartest people also are musicians. Piano's nice because it teaches you classical music and a lot of culture and history. Guitar is a wonderful instrument. You can carry it around with you, but sometimes guitar and drums all leads to craziness, rock and roll, substance abuse and all that stuff, and going deaf. Basketball, I like it as a sport because you can play it your whole life. It's hard to make it on the team though, because it's very competitive and there's only 5 starters at the high school level, and then at the college level, you got to be super good to make it at the college level. But at least you can play it your whole life and they don't get too many injuries. Dancing, again, you might say dancing's not a sport, but dancing is something you can do your whole life, and there's rhythmic gymnastic dancing, there's other types of dancing. It's something you can do your whole life and it's pleasant, gets you moving. Okay, middle level sports. For all these middle level sports, there's a mixture of good and bad things. What I like about golf, similar to tennis, you meet a lot of rich people, gets you outside, you get some vitamin D exposure. What I don't like about golf is the golf courses smell. I mean, they stink. They're spraying all kinds of crap on the grass like atrazine, which is an endocrine disrupting chemical, estrogenic. So, I mean, this golf courses just tend to stink. And so that's one of the reasons why I don't personally like going to golf courses too much. But there are those other benefits, and you don't get too many injuries in golf. Wrestling, I wrestled when I was in high school and college, and I did enjoy it very much, but it's kind of a brutal sport. If you focus on technique, then it's very intellectual, and that's a good thing. But a lot of high school coaches are ignorant, and they pressure the kids to cut weight, and then the kids just become miserable or starving themselves, and they don't do well in school. The other thing I don't like about wrestling is it's starting to trend into a lot of this mixed martial arts. I don't like this mixed martial arts stuff when it involves head trauma. I think if you're just doing the throws and stuff like that, like Aikido and whatnot, then you're getting some exercise, that's fine. But if anything that causes head trauma is going to lower your IQ, and so I don't recommend that. You need your brain every day of your life. Baseball is okay. There's a risk of getting hit by a beanball from the pitcher, but I actually knew a lot of baseball players in college. I lived in a fraternity with a bunch of baseball players, and they're always a bunch of talkers. There's a lot of sitting around and doing nothing in baseball, and sort of like compared to wrestlers were real intense, trying to get better and win. The baseball players were always just chatting, shooting the breeze. I liked them. They were nice guys, but it's sort of a different breed than a wrestler. I mean, I sort of used to hanging around with wrestlers. All right, gymnastics. Gymnastics, I think, certainly it's very athletic and teaches you grace and all that, but a lot of injuries in gymnastics. Some of those flips off a beam and stuff. I think it's a little bit dangerous, and you could end up with head trauma or a broken neck or something, and a fractured spine. So gymnastics, the problem is that it's dangerous, but other than that, I like it. Weightlifting. What's great about weightlifting is you can do it your whole life. What's bad about weightlifting, a lot of young guys are so eager to build their muscles, they try to cheat in a sense, and they start taking protein supplements which damage their kidneys and poison themselves because all the heavy metal contaminants in protein supplements, and they get other side effects potentially if they take that creatine stuff. Don't take any protein supplements, don't take any creatine, don't take any supplements at all. Just lift weights, it's enjoyable, okay? And I think young men are programmed to want to go join the older men to hunt and forage. We're just ancestrally, biologically, evolutionarily programmed to do that. You know, every young guy likes lifting weights. I like lifting weights still, even in my old age. So as long as you just lift weights, lifting weights is great. But too many young guys start taking all these protein supplements, other things, they make themselves sick, they damage their kidneys. So that's why I put weightlifting in the middle rather than as one of the upper best sports. I just included arm wrestling. You know, you might say it's not really a sport. So I realize it's not like a high school or college sport, but for what it's worth, it can be a hobby to keep you in shape. Okay, bicycling. For bicycling, again, it's a good hobby, gives you exercise. I'll ride a stationary bike. Some guys really like to ride outdoors. You got to be careful though, you know. A lot of these, like, you know, you'll have this teacher in junior high who rides her bike to school, you know, and then a couple years later you hear she got hit by a car. It's kind of dangerous, you know. A lot of times these people who ride bicycles end up getting hit by cars. So that's the problem with bicycling. It's pretty dangerous, but certainly stay in pretty great shape. Stationary bike, again, is good enough for me. I like stationary bike. I can read on a stationary bike. What are the worst sports? Now, these sports are a lot of fun to play. I get that these are a lot of fun to play, and your kid might love these sports. Your kid might be a superstar at these sports. Okay, that's nice, but all I'm saying is these sports tend to cause cognitive impairment, and that's a problem. Soccer, I think, is one of the sleeper sports. It's one of the stupidest sports. Now, what they ought to do in soccer, my opinion, is just have no heading of the ball, because it's the heading that causes brain damage. If it weren't for the heading, I would think soccer is a great sport. But I know what happens. The other guys on the team say if you don't head the ball with your head, then you're just a chicken shit, you're no good. So they kick the ball in practice like corner kicks, and the guy has to head the ball into the goal, and that causes brain damage, okay? If you look, there's been studies on college soccer players doing MRIs of their brain, and you can see brain damage on them. You don't want to do anything where you're getting brain damage. You know, if you're volunteering to have some guy kick a ball at your head, it's like volunteering to be punched in the head. It's a bad idea. Soccer causes brain damage, and therefore I don't recommend it. I've known people who had very talented children and then who had problems from soccer. One of them, their daughter had to drop out of college because she got brain damage from playing soccer. So anyways, I don't recommend soccer for that reason. Head trauma. Football is a lot of fun. It's fun to watch. It is fun to play. And some guys are just gifted athletes at it, and that's great. But football players do end up with a lot of injuries. There's a very high risk of concussion. They end up with increased incidence of chronic traumatic encephalopathy. The average pro football player dies at about 54 years of age, which is pretty young. Okay, you know, the average Loma Linda vegan dies at, for female, 89.6 years of age, male 87 years of age. So that's potentially losing out on 35 years of life. So that's for pro football players, all right? So that's what I think is the problem with pro football, with football. Other than that, it's a lot of fun, I get that. All right, MMA, you don't want to, or boxing, I think those are really bad ideas. You don't want to do anything where you're getting punched in the head. Anybody getting punched in the head, it's going to cause brain damage, okay? You don't want brain damage. You want your brain to be untraumatized. All right, next sport is swimming. Now, a lot of people tell me, oh, swimming is a great sport, no head trauma. The problem with swimming is all day long you're breathing chlorinated, fluoridated water. So it's like, that's toxic air. I mean, what is chlorine? Think about breathing chlorine, okay? What connotation does that call to mind? And then there's secondary metabolites of the chlorine. You can have transdermal absorption of the fluoridated water and some, you know, inhalation of it. I think, you know, I never met a swimmer that was too smart. I went to Stanford and I knew some swimmers, and intellectually I was not that impressed by them. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think so. I think swimming lowers a person's IQ. So anyways, that's just a couple suggestions for sports. Hope that's helpful.